to episode 136 of Coffee and Co-Read, your source for all things literary with Kristen
and Catherine, where we believe there's nothing better than a hot coffee and an awesome book. Join us for our virtual book club, where we take one book a month and dive into all of the drama, adventure, and romance we can find. Hey, Kristen.
Hi, Catherine.
So this month, we're reading The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King. I don't know why I was going to say Prince, but that's what was in my brain. By Carissa Broadbent.
Mm-hmm.
It is book 2 of the Nightborn Duet, which is a Crowns of Nyaxia novel. So this is the second book, obviously, in the duet. The first book was The Serpent and the
Wings of Night.
Thank you. And the Wings of Night, yes. So we did that book in January of this year, so not actually that long ago.
I mean, it's October.
Shut up. Listen. I will be not taking this from you. It is still summer.
All right. Whatever you say.
Fine. It is October. I can't believe it's almost 2025.
It's spooky season.
I can't do this right now. Yeah. So I guess it was 9 months ago. So it has been a little bit.
Yeah.
A little while.
Yeah.
But the next book in, I guess, this trilogy of duologies is coming out next month. So we figured we'd do this one in preparation. I haven't read The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King yet. I believe you read it.
I did.
Yes.
Yes.
Immediately after you finished.
Yes.
In January you read it,
yeah.
likely.
Yeah, I did. It, like,
yeah.
I find that this is just one of those series, like, I will say I did like the first book slightly more. However, this one is still really, really good, and, like, I was impressed with the writing. Like, I find, and I've said it before, I just find that a lot of the really popular books that are out nowadays, like, not all of them, obviously, but a lot of them, the writing is just not, it's just not, like, you could tell that it's not perfect. Like, you could tell that it's a little bit iffy. And, like, maybe there's some self-editing happening. But I just, like, I really like that the writing in this is actually really good. Like,
yeah. I think you said that when we were reading the first book, because it's actually, and I'm assuming, is the second book still on Kindle Unlimited?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, when we were reading the first book, you were surprised that it was on Kindle Unlimited because the writing was so good in, and, like, not to say that that's the case normally, but, like, this book is, and the first one, obviously, they became semi-popular, so I am surprised that they still are on Kindle Unlimited and that, like, she didn't take them off.
Yeah, so I think what happened, too, is that she either self-published digitally, I think, or something along those lines, and then the books got so popular that they were, like, removed from any shelves they were on, and then republished under, like, an actual publishing company. So,
Bramble.
Yeah, so Bramble did them. So that's why Ashes and the Star-Cursed King sort of had a re-release not that long ago, like sometime this year, I think.
Yeah, I was trying to get it, a physical copy of it, and it only was this year.
Yeah.
It's actually really pretty.
So so it got popular enough that, like, Bramble picked it up and decided to release it sort of in the more traditional format. So, because I think the only version you got was a hardcover. Like, I don't even know if they've released paperback yet.
Yeah, it also says, so I'm just looking at the actual physical copy, but it says previously self-published by author in April 2023, and first TOR edition was 2024.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Oh, there was a signed one. I don't have that one, I don't think. Oh, I've never looked at the map. This is interesting. Anyway, yeah. Very pretty book. It's one of the ones that has like a pretty like
if you take the dust jacket off. That is really nice, yeah.
And on the back it says, "Love is a sacrifice at the altar of power."
Ooh.
Interesting.
Yeah, but even the dust jacket cover is really beautiful. Like, I recommend it's a great, like, as much as I don't want to say, like, buy books just for how they look on your shelf, obviously. But, like, if you are a aesthetic individual that likes pretty books on your shelf, this is definitely a great one. Oh, you can get it on...
It is.
I think you can get it on paperback. No, never mind, you can't.
Not in
paperback is
Canada
not available as of right now.
My sticker wouldn't come off, so I'm gonna need to get some like
Goo Gone or something.
Crap.
Oh, paperback comes out November 19th, 2024.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So that's another reason we're doing it this month.
Not a happy accident at all. Completely on purpose.
Yeah. So like I said, it's my first time reading it. It's Kristen's second time reading it, so it'll be one of those. But I do like,
I feel like they're all one of those lately.
Yeah, it's because I'm struggling to get into books lately. I've actually started reading a real life book to see if that'll like get me into books. I'm reading Ed Gamble's like life book.
Amazing. Yeah.
It's actually really good. He's really funny.
Yes.
But I'm hoping this will like get me back into reading, and then I'll start being able to pick up other books. I'm sick of finishing a book, and kind of like this, like the last book kind of pissed me off because you're like, ooh, the couple is so happy, and then you're like, disasters, they hate each other, and I'm like, I don't want to have to start a relationship again in another book.
Yeah.
They already had one, and now they're having a breakup.
Yeah.
Over it.
Yeah.
But that's where we are.
It's true. Yeah. So I guess like just a little recap of what happened in the last book. So we met our two main characters, Oraya and Raihn. And Oraya is a human who lives in a vampire city with her guardian, who is the leader of the ruler, like the king of the vampire city, called VIncent. And he has raised her and trained her to be like a lethal fighting machine. And she enters this like Hunger Games of vampires called the Kajari, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And just because at the end, whoever wins gets a favor from the goddess Nyaxia. And she wanted to ask her to link her and Vincent forever, like link them magically so that she won't die, and like they'll share power and stuff like that. Not that she won't die, but it would make it harder to kill her, I think.
Would their lives be like intertwined?
I believe so.
Yeah. So
if you kill one, you kill them
at the both, time. Yeah. Which would more than likely have given her a longer lifespan because he's immortal. Yes. Or it could have just meant that she would have died in the last book because he died in the last book.
Anyway, so she meets in the course of this competition, she meets Raihn, who is a vampire of the different. So like she is part of the High Edge vampire clan. He is part of the Risham vampire clan, and they develop a relationship in the crucible of competition. And then in the end, they're fighting. She has to kill him in order to win, and he sort of forces her to do so. So she asks Nyaxia for Raihn back, and that he won instead of her. So then Nyaxia brings him back to life, gives him the wish, and he wishes for his power back. Because I guess Vincent the king, he won his competition and he asked to remove the power from the Raihn vampire ruler. And so Raihn asked for it back. Turns out he is the heir to the Raihn Empire. And then he uses his power to kill Vincent, who turned out to be Oraya's dad.
Yeah.
It's all very complex. And then Oraya, gets held against her will slightly by Raihn in her old room in her castle that she grew up in. And he sort of forces her to marry him because otherwise she's dead meat. Because now she's sort of in enemy territory. And that's where we left off the last book, is them getting married and her being like, I hate your guts. But they're married, so...
Yeah, and basically this book starts very similarly.
And there's no need to, consummate the marriage. Like, this is not one of those books. Unlike last month. This is very much like, they're just married.
Yeah, which is good, because it's nobody's business. So yeah, I guess we'll get into it. So just a heads up, this isn't a spoiler-free zone and things might get saucy. So this week we're reading chapters 1 to 20. We start off and it's a prologue, which is exactly what Kristen just said almost. But it's actually Raihn's point of view. But when I started it, it's so hard to get into books sometimes, especially it's been obviously 9 months since I read the first one. But it was in the king's point of view, and I was like, okay, this is Vincent's point of view. And for the first half, I was like, yeah, that kind of works. But then the next half of it, I was like, is it switched point of views? Anyway, it's not Vincent's point of view, it's Raihn's point of view, and I was just confused. But it's basically the last trial, so they're in the Colosseum, and he thinks he's about to die because of a child, which is why I thought it was Vincent originally, because I was like, I don't know. I didn't think that Raihn really called Oraya a child because he wanted to have sex with her, and that sounds weird. But he did. He called her a child. So he's currently watching the Bloodborne contestant attack Oraya, and he looks at the prince and nods, and he understands. And Raihn knows that he sold his kingdom. And the prince smiles, which is a sign to the contestant that is fighting Oraya, and she hesitates, and then Oraya kills her. And Raihn thinks 300 years is a long time to live, because he's like, now I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
That was enough time. Yeah. And we also know, he used to be human, so, he didn't expect to live this long anyway, so. So then, in this memory prologue thing, they're fighting, Oraya and Raihn, and he makes the first move to goad her, and he's okay with her beautiful eyes being the last thing that he sees. And he tells her to end it because she's more deserving. And it, obviously we know what happens. She kills him, then blah, 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 what you just said. But we get another part after, and he says he knows she'll be the reason he dies the next time, too. And I'm like, if he fucking dies in this book, I will not be very happy. I know I don't hate books like that as much as Kristen does, but if this is not a book where they both live once they finally get back together, I'm going to lose my shit. So then we go to Oraya's point of view, and it's kind of exactly where you just left off the last book. We get that time is passing. She thinks every morning she wakes up and she has the crushing realization that her father is dead. It must be hard too, because she's literally still in the bedroom that she used to live in when he was alive. So that has to make it even harder. So this morning, Raihn is knocking on her door and yells out to her, and she just thinks that she hates him. And she answers the door, and she hates that she can see that he's concerned for her. But he tells her that they have guests, and she can hear, and this is a common thing that keeps happening, but she can hear Vincent's voice telling her that she knows how to control her emotions. And hearing his voice makes her flinch, which it always does. But it's like, it's a reoccurring thing that happens a lot, that she hears his voice. But Raihn notices her flinching, like he always does. And he kind of tries to goad her here to, like, get her out of her, like, spiral of grief that she's currently in. Because she literally just woke up and was like, oh, he's dead still. Because she said, I think when she sleeps, she can almost forget, like, she forgets that he's dead, and then every morning she wakes up and it's, like, the crushing realization of,
like,
grief.
And, like, I don't like his, like, mentality. Like, I understand you see somebody, like, grieving hard in a way that might be dangerous to them, but, like, I feel like he has no right, one, to dictate how she grieves, because, like, what is this, maybe a week after he's dead? Yeah. Like, her father figure, well, like, I say her father figure, but her actual father that we discovered after he died. So, like, one, her father, and, like, two, he's the one who murdered him. So, like, I just feel like if she wants to wallow in grief, then he should leave her to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, like, I understand he cares about her, and, like, he sees that this is, like, unhealthy, but, like, I feel like you need to give it some time. Like, it might have been a week. Yeah,
but, like, is it unhealthy to grieve your father that was murdered?
No,
like,
but that's what I mean. Like, if he views how she is grieving as unhealthy and wants to, like, lift her out of that spiral of depression, I get that he's doing it out of concern. However, it's been a week. She is absolutely allowed to grieve in whatever way she sees fit. If she's like this, like, a year from now, then, yeah, maybe, like, try and help her out a little bit.
Yeah, and I think an issue that I have with it, too, is that, like, he wants her to fight, and he wants to, like, push her to, like, get her spark or whatever. But I'm like, that's just covering up and pushing down the grieving so that she's just, like, not actually processing and dealing with it. Like, what she's doing is probably more helpful than, like, trying to just act like herself because that's what he wants.
Yeah.
So, and you'd think that he'd be, like you said earlier, he's 300. He's dealt with grief before. We know he used to have a family. He obviously grieved them at some point. He loved other people that have died. Like, you'd think that he would understand a bit better than humans do about, like, this is a process. You can't just, like,
switch it on and off.
Yeah. But I feel like this just goes to show that, like, he hasn't actually dealt with any of his grief either, I don't think. Like, he just fights and doesn't actually process well enough. Yeah. So,
and, like,
now that we've psychoanalyzed Raihn,
but, like, he's also obviously feeling guilty.
Oh, of course.
And, like, being like, feel better, to try and make himself feel better. And it's like, no, dude, like, you gotta take consequences for your actions. Like, you did this.
Yeah.
And, like, it's a shitty situation because, like, he did it for his people, but still.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It was her father.
Yes.
So, not great. Yeah. So, she can, like, she doesn't react to his goading. She's just, like, done with it. But she can tell that he's nervous. And this is another common thing, that she can tell what he's feeling and nobody else can. But she's very in tune with his emotions. So yeah, she can tell he's nervous, and she knows that nobody else notices it. And he gives her a dress to put on, and then he leaves. And then he comes back, and he looks hot as fuck, but she notices that he's wearing Vincent's crown. And it's, like, the same one he wore when he died. And she's like, somebody literally had to clean his, like, bloody guts and shit off of this crown, and now Raihn is wearing it. And that's just, like, you know,
pouring salt in the wound of her father's murder.
Doesn't feel great for her.
Imagine.
Right? So she has her dress on, but she can't reach back to do up all the little clasps she sees on the back. Listen. So he asks to help, and she immediately just says no, but then she's like, shit, like, how else am I going to get it done up? So she concedes. So she turns around, and she, like, hears Vincent, or thinks Vincent would hate the fact that she's, like, putting her back to her enemy kind of thing. And she also hates that she craves his attention. And, like, it's this whole duality thing. She has it with her father of, like, he wasn't great, but he was good to her. So, like, she struggles with that. And she has it now with Raihn, which is unfortunate. Like, everybody that she ever has feelings for is, like, fucking her over. Mm-hmm. It's really sad.
Yeah, that, like... That's her existence.
Yeah. I was kind of hoping that, like... And I know there's so much happens in this first weeks, and there's 3 more weeks. Like, I have no idea what happens in this book, but... There's so much already happening. I'm like, can she get a family member that's still alive somewhere down the road? Like, she needs somebody on her side here. But anyway, Kara shows up and interrupts them to say that they're late. And she thinks, like, she knows that Carissa wants her dead. And she thinks sometimes she wants that too. Which is just, like, obviously super sad. But she's currently living as a prisoner in her home and... is deep in grief, so it's not really surprising. So Raihn just says, let's give them a show. So they go to the throne room, and Raihn moves, like, Oraya's chair from wherever it was to, like, put it next to his throne. And Carissa is like, I don't think you should do that. And he's just like, whatever. Septimus shows up then, and he is the bloodborne prince. I guess he's the heir, is he? Do they have an heir?
Bloodborne
heir.
I don't think he's, like... I think he's the prince, like... I don't think it's the same. So, like...
Okay, because the bloodborne are cursed.
Yeah, so I do think they have, like, heirs and stuff the same way that... the Hayaj and the Rishon do, but they don't fight... Like, they're not in the fight for the same territory. You know what I mean? Like, the Rishon and the Hayaj are constantly fighting for control over one land.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I think the Bloodborne have sort of their own spot off to the side. And, like, they just have a monarchy. So, like, they have a king and a queen. So, this guy, Septimus, is the prince. He has parents and he has siblings. And, like, when they die, he'll take over. Like, it's not...
Okay.
I
just assumed that, like, they didn't fight because they were cursed and they couldn't actually have the throne anymore.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. But
yeah, I don't really remember. But anyway, so he's like... So basically what's happening here is, like, we have the Rishon heir is Raihn. The Hayaj heir is Oraya. And this is the Bloodborne prince. So it's, like, 3 high-ups of each of the vampire clans.
Yeah.
Races, I guess. So yeah, he shows up and he actually lets slip to the reader and to Oraya that it's actually, like, the Rishon nobles are the ones coming. Raihn then asks, I guess, Carissa, where Vale is, but they were like, oh, he must be delayed. So Raihn's like, okay, well, let them in. We go over to Raihn's point of view now, which I like. I like that both point of views are in this book. Mm-hmm. This is good. He thinks the last time that they were all together in this room, he was a slave. And he remembers everything. So, obviously, all of these nobles were around when, 200 years ago, when he was a slave and the Rishon king was in power. So he knows that, like, the nobles don't respect him because they used to abuse him.
And also, he's turned as well, which doesn't garner the same amount of respect as a born vampire.
Yeah, which is funny because, like, it's him, and then, obviously, Oraya is an heir, too. She's not turned, but she's half human, mostly human, so, like, both of them are kind of screwed as heirs. But yeah, so none of these people respect him. They literally used to, like, abuse and rape him. And he's like, great, now I'm pandering to them, basically. It's really awful. But he starts talking about how he killed the man who killed their king, obviously Vincent, and raped their queen, and decimated their people for 200 years. And he can kind of feel like Oraya's stare on him, because obviously, like, that's her father, and she's still reconciling the many sides of him.
Yeah.
But he also knows that she can see through this, and she can see that he's actually, like, bothered by being around them, and, like, he's playing a part right now. This isn't actually who he is. But he does tell them that he's going to restore the house, and it'll be feared. So, Nikolai was the old king, and his cousin Mardis is there. But Mardis's brother, I guess, is older, is actually the head of this house and actually the noble. And so Raihn goes over and is like, where's your brother? And he's just like, nah, he couldn't make it, which is like super insulting. Obviously, this is the king. So Raihn tells Mardis that he'll have to swear fealty instead and bow. And then Mardis refuses, and he says he can't bow to someone who defiled themselves. And like, in that moment, Raihn is just like thinking that like Mardis was one of his biggest tormentors and obviously used to like rape him and abuse him. And to throw that back at him when it obviously wasn't his choice and he was a slave is just like one of the shittiest things that he can do. And he also says he can't bow to someone who stands next to a bloodborne prince. And then, of course, and this is a common thing that we always talk about in books, is we have to make the fucking villains so bad, and rape needs to be the big thing, or there's like, or we'll feel bad that somebody killed them. Like, I was fine with him killing them before this next line, but of course we had to put this in the book. So Mardis says that Raihn says that he's freed them, but Vincent's whore is seated at the throne. And I'm like, it's Vincent's daughter. Let's stop calling her his whore, because it's his biological daughter. But okay. Yeah. And he says, it's fine if you want to fuck her, but all you need is a mouth and a cunt. Why not, like, I guess, put a mark on the rest? Why not beat the shit out of her, I guess? Like, why not be as bad as they were to him? Anyway, I was interested that they actually said the word cunt. I was like, oh wow, we're this kind of book. But yeah, Raihn obviously goes into like a killing calm because he's like, don't talk about my woman that way. But he says, I know, I'm like, I didn't need this. I didn't need a threat of rape to Oraya to hate this man. I feel like it's overkill in an attempt to make us feel like he's still a good guy, even though he's literally going to murder someone. But anyway.
Well, that's the thing, though, right? Is like, we always need the justification for murder. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, there has to be that, look how terrible that person is, I'm going to murder it, so I'm going to murder him, and that makes me a good person.
But and I just, like, I know we always bring it up. I just hate that it's always throwing rape around as the reason. Yeah. It's just, like, and I know why. Yeah. Because it is terrifying. We all have like, that
gut instinctual reaction of, like, anyone who rapes someone is a piece of shit.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't know. I feel like it's thrown around too much, I guess.
And, like,
I'm kind of done with it.
But, like, think, too, about, like, any survivors. Like, anybody who has survived and, you know, had to deal with the trauma of being raped. And, like, I just feel like that closes so many books for you. Like, not that you necessarily can't read the word or anything like that, but, like, I don't know. I, you know, obviously haven't experienced it, so I can't speak for those people. But, like, imagine, like, just reading a book and then some, like, rando throwing that out there and, like, how triggering that might be. And, like,
yeah.
A lot of these books that, like, mention it in passing by a dick who then gets murdered, there's no trigger warning for that in there.
No.
So, like, that can be, like, traumatic.
And, yeah, and it's also the, like, nonchalant way that it's always brought up. To be like, we know this guy's bad, but he's actually evil. And yeah. And, like, obviously, this book does have a lot of themes of rape in it. Most of them are in the past. So I'm assuming there are trigger warnings of this book anyway. I don't know for sure. There was a line... Sorry, 1 second. There is a line that says, this book contains subject matters that might be difficult for some readers, including graphic violence, violence against children, discussion of sexual assault and rape, and slavery. Okay. And this book also contains explicit sexual content. So, like, there is a warning. Right.
They don't, like, not all books that, like, bandy that about have that.
Yes. Well, like, it's literally, I feel like, every book we've read lately. Yes. Like, I'm pretty sure, like, Throne of Glass had it. I'm like, that definitely didn't have a warning.
Well, that's apparently YA.
Yeah.
Oh my god, side note for a second.
Yeah.
One of my students, who's, like, a decent reader, came up, like, said, Miss, I ordered a book on Amazon. I'm so excited to get it. And I was like, no way, what book? She was like, Haunting Adeline.
Ah!
I was like, you can't read that. She was like, what? Why? I was like, you can't read that. Don't read it. I was like, that's too old for you.
Yeah.
Anyway, she was like, she asked why. I did tell her why. I said, like,
yeah.
You know, I was like, it's not questionable consent. There's no consent, you know, in the first, like, 3/4 of that book. Maybe even 7/8.
Yeah. And then in the next book, too.
Well, yes. And, you know, I mentioned that, like, there were inanimate objects involved and everything. So, like, you know, she was like, oh, I don't want to read that. And I was like, no, you don't. You don't want to read it. Anyway, she said, okay, thanks. She's like, next time I need to order a book, I'll ask you first.
Oh, good. I'm glad that she, like, yeah.
Anyway.
And, like, there's nothing wrong with reading Haunting Adeline. Or Hunting. Which one's first? Haunting's first. Yeah. I read Haunting Adeline, and I read the first half of Hunting Adeline, too. Like, as an adult, perfectly fine to read, but, like, especially kids that aren't yet in relationships, we want to be teaching them healthy things, not the absolute depravity that us as adults can read and not hate.
But, like, I feel like, too, that, like, adults can sort of understand that line, right? Like, we can understand that, like, something that we read in books that we might find, like, ooh, is absolutely not okay in real life. You know what I mean? Like, someone, like, Raihn here is about to kill this guy because he dared speak negatively of his queen or whatever. And, like, that's okay. And that's like, aw. But, like, if some guy said something about me and then my husband went and killed him, I would be like, I don't think so. You know what I mean? Like, it's...
I do.
We understand the difference. And, like, when kids are at that age where they're still forming those impressions on what relationships can and can't be and should and shouldn't be, I feel like we don't want to... They don't need to be any more confused than they already are.
100%. I do find it interesting. I know we are so on a tangent now, but I need to go a tiny bit further. How, like, people look down on books that predominantly women read that are like this, and they're like, you wouldn't want that in real life, blah, 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 blah. But, like, horror movies are okay, and, like...
Do you want that in real life?
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's, and, like, there are obviously horror books, too, but it's the same principle of, like, just because you watch it, just because you read it, doesn't mean it's what you want to happen.
Yeah.
It's just, I hate that women are, like, looked down on for reading books like this when it's all the same.
I know.
Anyway.
It's funny, actually, I was talking to my mom about it because I told her that I had read a book that was, like, a reverse harem with, like, one girl and 3 or 4 men. And my mom was like, what? She was like, so this is what you want in your relationship? And I was like, no, I don't want that. And absolutely not.
Way too much work.
Absolutely too much work. And like, a lot of these like reverse harems, I find they always devolve into calling the girl like a cum slut. A lot. And like, again, in the book, I'm like, yeah. But in real life, if someone were to call me that, I'd be like, no, that's not okay. So like,
I am leaving.
I absolutely do not want that in my life. But my mom even like doesn't get it. And like, and valid point, like she doesn't have to, but it was just funny that she was like, have you talked to Sid about this? And I was like, ugh. No, because it's like, I'm not looking to like start my own harem. No, they're just fun to read. Anyway, we can get back on track now.
Yeah. So back to this man that he's gonna kill. Raihn says that he appreciates Mardis's honesty, and he walks over, and he thinks like ever since his rebirth, when he fucking died, obviously his power's been stronger because that was his wish to get the Rishon power back. Mm-hmm. And he just like lets it go, and he's like holding Mardis's head, and he like uses his asterisk, and then it just like, I guess, beheads him.
Lovely.
With his power. He's just like holding his head in his hands, and his body is on the ground. And everybody's just surprised. And I'm like, why? Why would we be surprised by him killing? Like, obviously this was going to happen. Yep. But he thinks, like, maybe it wasn't wise to kill the brother of the most powerful noble. Like, that's not going to get the guy that didn't even bother to show up on his side. But he does think, like, he's good at fighting. He's not good at all of this other bullshit. Yeah. Which is just, like, such a common trope.
He's Cassian.
Like, I was just going to say, is he Cassian? He looks back, and Oraya has, like, bloodthirsty satisfaction on her face, too. And it's, like, the first time in a while that he's seen a reaction from her. So they're kind of on the same page. He says then to everyone else that he's the Nightborn King, and he doesn't need their respect. Fear will do. And then he says, bow. And he waits, and he knows, like, he needs their fealty. Like, he needs them to, like, follow him. Luckily, Vale just, like, throws open the doors and comes in with a woman. And he goes over and he says, my king. And he bows in front of, obviously, Raihn. And he vows his sword, his blood, and his life. And he says it's an honor to serve as his head of war. And we kind of get that, like, the last time he said this was to Nikolai, because he was also Nikolai's head of war. So, like, Raihn chose him as his head of war, kind of because he knew that the nobles would follow him. That's why he was like, is he here yet? And then all of the other nobles bow too. So I'm like, that's good.
So Vale is like, we like Vale.
We do? Because after the first week, I'm just like, okay, he's the guy I'm not really sure about.
Yeah. We do.
Okay. But so he shows up with a woman, and I was like, is this going to be someone in Araya's family? I'm, like, obsessed with the idea that they're going to find, like, her mother or something. And I know I'm, like, delusional, but that's all I can think. So anyway, we go over to Araya's point of view now, and she thinks that she saw the honesty in Raihn, like, when he was in the situation of, like, he was worried. He didn't know what was going to happen, blah, 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 blah. She can see everything in his emotions that nobody else can see. So 2 guards are escorting her away, and Septimus comes over to talk to her and says, like, he's going to need more soldiers if that's the best that Raihn's people have to offer. And she kind of just, like, refuses to talk to him. And he's, like, trying to goad her a bit, too. But then Desdemona, who is Septimus's guard, comes over and says that they have an issue with the attack on Misrata. And, like, she's still walking, and she's being brought to her room. But Septimus and his guard kind of stop back there, but she can still hear what they're saying. But Desdemona says that they need to pull their troops from the armory if they want to have enough men for the attack. And then she's brought into her room and she can't hear anything else. So she just lies on her bed and she waits for the 4 clicks of locks. And she just hears 2. Which is just wild that she's like...
She can hear locks
in her
closing. Oh.
Well, I was thinking that she's just locked into a room like a cell. I'm like, what is...
Oh.
I guess. But yeah. But it is wild that, like, Raihn's like, it's to protect you. When it's like, the locks are from the outside. Anybody could open them.
That's true, yeah.
But anyway, so only 2 are locked. And she thinks, like, her first day here, she was able to get 3 open, so she should be able to get out now. But she thinks it's better to wait until, like, after sunset. Because most vampires will be asleep. And Raihn isn't, like, he doesn't go to bed as soon as the sun sets. Like, most vampires, like, he's not often around. So she's hoping that she can, like, get the sweet spot of, like, after sunset. No, opposite. At sunrise. When the sun is coming up. The vampire's nighttime.
Yes.
So she's hoping she can get up when most vampires are asleep, but Raihn isn't yet back to his room, because his room is right next door. That's it. She hears Vincent's voice say to her that she knows the castle, like, better than anyone else. And obviously that makes her flinch, like, always. Mm-hmm. But she's like, I got a plan. This is what I'm going to do. We go over to Raihn's point of view now, and he's with Karis and Katura. And Karis just says that, like, that was a complete shit show. And Raihn kind of says it went better than expected. And Karis asks if he would have slaughtered them all if Vale didn't show up. And he says it's not a bad idea, and it's what Nikolai would have done. Karis then says, like, you aren't like him. But the way he says it is like it's a bad thing. And I'm like, it's so weird. I'm like, what is Karis and why? Because, like, he was apparently what is he? He was apparently a slave too at the same time as Raihn was. So it's just, like, interesting that, like, I just don't really understand what he... Anyway. So Raihn starts thinking of, like, when he and Oraya got married, he told Oraya that they'd rip apart the world and build something new together. Like, I guess in the kind of way of, like, if he killed all the nobles, then they could put somebody else there and that would be a start. Vale shows up then, and he apologizes for coming late, and he kind of blames the weather, but Raihn says that he's sure that his turned wife needed time to recover, and the fact that, like, Vale turned a human for his wife kind of pisses Raihn off, because he's like,
why would you do that?
Why
would you put her through that?
Yeah. So I'm kind of wondering if there's more to that, but we don't get it yet.
So can I say, so, like, Vale and his, like, new turned wife, I think, I'm not 100% sure, but there's either, like, a prequel or a spin-off, I think, or, like, a short story. There's some sort of thing about them.
Interesting. Because, yeah, there is...
Somewhere.
Yeah, there is a moment in this where Raihn sees, like, emotion on Vale's face and is like, oh, I think he actually loves her. Yeah. So that makes sense.
So, yeah. I don't know if it, like, I know I read that it exists. Mm-hmm. I'm not 100% sure if it is currently in existence or if it's, like, in the works for the future. Yeah. I just know that, like, either the intention to tell their story is there or actually telling their story is there.
Yeah. Interesting. So, yeah, they all discuss strategies for hours, and they basically come up with the fact that they're screwed. And Vale basically just tells Raihn that it was stupid that he took Septimus's deal, and it's stupid that Oraya is alive, but Raihn is just like, he can't really explain either of it to him, because the reason for both is because he loves Oraya, so, like, he can't really just say that.
Not in front of everyone.
Yeah. So they basically come back to the only reason they haven't been overthrown is that the Bloodborne are helping. So Vale gives his recommendations, and then he leaves with Keturah to discuss more. Karis kind of goes back to their conversation before and asks Raihn if he has people to replace the nobles if he were to kill them. But obviously he doesn't. They need the nobles' loyalty to get Rishon's support. And Karis then says that Oraya is a danger. But Raihn says that she can't act against him. And it looks good to have her leashed. And he says they're doing this for Nezinin. And he couldn't help her. So now, like, he couldn't help her when she was alive because she was the king's, like, wife, I guess. She was the queen. But for some reason, they all loved her. I don't really understand why they loved her so much. We get a little bit here, but I'm like, is this enough?
It does, like, there are flashbacks.
Okay.
And so this person was, she was mentioned in the last book as well.
Yeah.
So I think it mentioned in the last book that her and Raihn were, like, together. Like,
yeah.
they had a physical, like, they had an amorous relationship.
Yeah, and we kind of get that a bit more now, but, like, she was the queen.
Yes.
As well.
She was, yeah, so, but that wasn't, I mean, not...
It wasn't consensual. It's the same as his situation with Oraya, basically.
Yeah.
And, yeah, so Raihn then, like, asks Karis if he hates all the nobles, too, because he's, like, he was a slave, too. And Karis just says, like, of course, but if they were to kill them all, then, like, who is left? Who wins then? Like, if they killed all the Rishon nobles, the Rishon wouldn't follow them. And then all the Hiyaj are being killed by the Bloodborns. So really, all that would be left would be the Bloodborns. Like, Septimus would win. But Raihn thinks that, like, I guess who wins then is something that, like, Nezinin used to say. To kind of, like, keep them in check, I guess. And Karis just says that they were all a little in love with her, right? About Nezinin. And Raihn agrees. And he thinks, like, he was the one sleeping with her, but they all loved her. And she treated them like people and not a collection of body parts. And I'm like, the bar is on the floor? Like, is this... I don't know. I guess I need more about their relationship, but, like, I guess in the interlude you probably get it. But it just seems like that's not enough for the love that they have for her. But I guess we get more.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was more like, this is gonna sound bad. I feel like it was more like trauma bonding. You know what I mean? Because, like, she treated them like humans when no one else was, and they were, like, slaves and being raped all the time. And, like, she treated them properly, but, like, she was also mistreated. So,
yeah,
you know, they trauma bonded.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, yeah, he goes back to his room and he thinks, like, I guess after he came to the castle, he did go to, like, the king's chambers, and it brought back bad memories from, like, when 200 years ago when he was a slave. But he also went to Vincent's desk, and he saw that, like, there was Oraya's handwriting was, like, on pieces of paper on the desk, and he, like, found it endearing at first, and then he was, like, annoyed because it's, like, her handwriting from when she was younger, and it was, like, battle strategies and stuff, and he's like, her whole life was fucked up too. So he now stays in the room next to Oraya, and he hears her cry every night. And the first night, he went to check on her, but he, like, made up some excuse for being there. But she, like, wasn't having it. And obviously, she doesn't want to be comforted by the person that killed the person she's grieving. Yeah. Like, what do you expect? Yeah. But she has nobody else either. It's just so sad. But he thinks back to, like, before the last trial, I guess, he told her not to stop fighting. And now she isn't fighting anymore. And it's kind of like what we said before. Like, she needs time. But he thinks, like, he's given her everything he can, but she doesn't want him. And kind of like we just said, obviously. So he gets in bed and he thinks, who wins? And then he thinks, like, Mezzanine sure the fuck didn't, and Oraya didn't either. So, like, he's come to terms with some shit. It's not great. So we go to Oraya's point of view now, and she uses, like, a makeshift hook to open the first lock, but she's struggling with the second one. And she hears Vincent's voice say that she's stronger than the lock. And she thinks, like, she hasn't used her magic in weeks, but decides to try. And at first she can't really call her magic to her, but then she thinks of Vincent dead, and the night fire comes, and she has to, like, it's too much at first, so she has to, like, control herself. Then she heats up the hook, and then, like, breaks the lock with it, and the door flies open. And she thinks, like, Vincent had a whole bunch of passages put in so that he would be able to escape and, like, get around wherever he wanted to. And she thinks, like, she needs a weapon if she's gonna leave, because, like,
she's gonna have to fight her way out.
Yeah, or if she gets out, like, there's vampires everywhere. Like, you can't live in this world without a weapon. So she goes to the nearest passage beside her, and basically every single door is locked other than, like, one, and she just ends up going down, and she ends up in the basement. And then, like, Vincent had chambers put in here too, and there's 8 doors, and the 5th door is the first one that unlocks, and it's Vincent's study. So she goes in there, and she looks on his desk just to, like, see what's there, and she finds a debrief of the city of Salinae, which is, if we remember the last book, where he took her from, and also where the 3rd trial?
Yeah,
I don't remember.
Something like that.
I think it was the 3rd. The 3rd trial was where they were, like, a decimated city. But this debrief says that the city of Salinae and its surrounding districts have been eliminated. And it makes her think of the trial and of her anger at Vincent, because, like, she had hoped that she could go back there and try to find some family, but Vincent had it destroyed. And then he, like, lied about it. So she's, like, pissed at him again now, but then on the desk she sees, like, a crudely made dagger that she made shortly after she got here, and, like, obviously he kept that for years. So she's, like, struggling to reconcile both versions of him, which, like, is a theme. In the middle of the desk there's just, like, shards of glass neatly stacked on top of each other. And she reaches out to touch it and just cuts herself. And the shards, like, magically move and form a shallow bowl with her blood in the center. And she feels an overwhelming sense of Vincent there. And then she sees flashes of him. And I'm like, I don't really understand why she saw flashes of him, but okay.
Yeah.
I think it's just, like, she feels, like, his presence in this moment and then thinks about times in the past, maybe, but I'm not sure. But then she recognizes Jasmine's voice saying Vincent's name. And I was kind of like, is this, like, memories that she's getting?
Yeah, is it like a pensieve?
Exactly. Because she sees movement in the blood. And then she calls out to Jasmine, and Jasmine responds Oraya's name. So it's, like, live. It's like...
It's a communication
It's not
device.
the past.
Yeah.
It's the present. Yeah, it's a communication device. Then she hears voices in the hallway near her, so she pulls her hand away, and the bowl turns back into shards of glass, and she just shoves them in her pocket. And I'm like, ow. But okay. Carissa and Raihn are in the hallway, and Raihn asks if they found anything useful, but Carissa says they know who they need to kill, and getting to them is the hard part. But getting rid of Misrata will help, which is the same thing that, like, Septimus was saying. They had to pull people to take over Misrata. And I'm assuming they're talking about they need to kill Jasmine, but, like, I don't actually know for sure.
Yeah.
Raihn stops outside of the door where she is, and he tells Carissa to go ahead. And then he just, like, goes in, and he's like, did you think I wouldn't smell you? Because, like, she cut herself, and he's very attuned to her blood.
But you would think that all the vampires would be like, blood? Blood?
I know. Yeah,
they're like sharks.
But anyway. Exactly. But, you know. She's actually hiding under the table, and like she doesn't have a weapon, and he's just like, are you gonna come out?
Yeah.
So she stands up and just looks at him, and he says that she's good at sneaking around where she isn't supposed to be, but she just says that this is her home, and he's the one keeping her a prisoner. And he says he's just trying to keep her alive, and it's hard. And it's like, if you're you're still locking the door from the outside. Yeah. Like, you should have locks on the inside if that's the case. But okay. He asks her then if she thinks he wants this, if he wants to hear her sobbing every night. And, like, she flinches at that because she's like, she didn't realize for sure that he could hear her. So now she's like, ugh, embarrassing. And he tells her, like, he made her an offer the night that they were married, but they both can't say those words that they were married. And he says it still stands. And he says, like, he hates this place and these people and this castle and his crown, but he doesn't hate her, not even a little. Like,
so the offer that he made, are we talking about, like, them in the same room together, or are we talking about how he would rule this place with her by his side?
Yeah, I think it's like earlier he said he thought of what he said to her that night of like, they'll burn this world down and then make a better one from the ashes. Like, I'm assuming that's what he means. He says that he failed her, but they are the same, and he wants her to build this kingdom with him. So kind of what we just got into. But she says he doesn't want Ahiaj's help. He's too busy killing. And she says, like, you're too busy killing us. And he's like, when did you become an us with the Ahiaj? Like, they've always saw you as cattle. Yeah. Like, what's going on kind of thing. But she then just says, like, you killed my father. And obviously we're in her head. And she's just like, it's all she can think when she looks at him. And she says that he lied to her and used her. Because he did. And in this moment, like, obviously, she's thinking that she's afraid she's going to fall apart. And she's, like, got, like, a pain in her chest. And she's, like, anxiety, overwhelmed with emotions, trying to push them down. And he says he's sorry it happened this way. And she knows that he actually means it. Like, he does feel bad. But, like, that doesn't, just because you're sorry doesn't make everything better again.
Mm-hmm.
She just says that he'd do it again, and he says he has an obligation to save lives. And she thinks, so does she. She has an obligation to her people too. So she goes back to her room, and she takes out the glass, and she recuts her finger, and it works the same as before. And she feels Vincent's presence again, and then she can hear Jasmine, but it's hard to understand her. And she's starting to get a bit frustrated, but then Vincent's voice tells her to be patient, and everything becomes a bit clearer. Jasmine asks, like, how much she knows about the state of the war, and she doesn't really want to admit that she doesn't know anything, so she just says she wants Jasmine's assessment, not the Rishon's. And Jasmine says, like, they've lost a lot of strongholds, and they're still fighting, but the Bloodborne are hard to fight. Oraya, like, hears footsteps, and she knows she's running out of time. So she tells Jasmine that they're planning an attack in Misrata, and they're leaving the armory unmanned, and she tells Jasmine to evacuate Misrata and to raid or take the armory back. And Jasmine just says that they'll try, and Oraya thinks, like, it's time to fucking fight, I guess, for her people now, because she is the heir. We get an interlude now, and this was like a common thing in the last book that we'd get Oraya's backstory in the interludes, so now we're getting Rain's backstory. So he was a 32-year-old human who loved his freedom, and he was in a shipwreck where basically everybody died, but he swam to shore, and he was crawling towards a beautiful city when the king found him. And the king is in the habit of collecting souls, and this man is just his type. So the king asked him, do you want to live? And the man, who was Rain, thought it was a stupid question. He has a family, and no mortal is brave in the face of an untimely death. So he begs yes, and the king turns him. We go to Rain's point of view now. And he's in a meeting with Septimus, and he's kind of thinking about, like, how they made their deal, how everything came together, which is super interesting because, like, the first time he actually met Septimus was just before the Kajari, and I just assumed they had met, like, ages before. But they met just before the Kajari, and Raihn was just like, I don't want anything to do with him, and then he kept coming back, and then finally he told Raihn that he knew who he was, and Raihn still to this day doesn't know how he figured it out. He, like, ripped apart his inner circle to try to, like, figure out who told him. So I'm like, there's somebody that's going to come back and, like, stab him in the back by the end of this book. And it better not be Misha.
By the middle of this book.
Okay. So yeah, interesting. Septimus, like, kept pressuring him, and then he noticed Oraya and realized he could use her against Raihn. And Raihn could, like, tell that Septimus was desperate and would do anything. So, like, he doesn't really know why Septimus was so desperate for this bargain. Like, we're still kind of getting pieces of it. And I think we get a big piece of it this week, but, like, it's not spelled out. But anyway. So, back to the present, Septimus is saying that they can't send the Bloodborne to Misrata anymore, even though they've been, like, planning this attack for ages. And Vale is pissed, but Septimus says if the Rishon were helping, it would be easier. And the Bloodborne are basically doing all of the fighting, which is, like, true. Raihn realizes that, like, obviously there's something else to this, but he doesn't know what. And he doesn't really want to show Septimus that he's, like,
figuring it out,
yeah. Yeah, so it's just interesting. But he knows that there's more to this than, like, and so do we, obviously. We're like, oh, they set up Oraya, fuck.
Yeah.
So later, Raihn and Vale are on the armory roof, and Raihn is contemplating, like, Septimus's decision, and he feels that something is going to happen. And he just tells Vale that, like, there's blood on the air. And he's decided Raihn is going to stay here tonight and asks Vale to get any other guards he can spare to come here as well. And we're like, fuck. Like, Oraya literally just told Jasmine to like,
go there,
destroy this place. Like, obviously this is bad. Like, I don't want Raihn to die. I don't want all of Oraya's people to die either. Like, it's not great. Raihn thinks, like, he almost wants something to go wrong to give him something to kill, because, like, that's what he's good at. Except he thinks, except for the last time he killed, it was VIncent, and that went poorly.
I mean, it went poor. The aftermath went poorly. The actual killing of him didn't go poorly, because he just did it.
Yeah. We go over to Oraya's point of view again, and it literally just says she knew something was wrong before the explosion hit. And I'm like, the explosion where? But I guess before, the Bloodborne left, and she was waiting for the Rishon to do the same, because they were all going to go attack Misrata, but they didn't. So she tried to use the mirror to warn Jasmine, but she couldn't get a hold of her. Because it's like a telephone now. And then the armory exploded, and it was like an identical attack to the one that happened on the Moon Palace. So that's interesting. But, like, Jasmine is kind of, like, she thinks Jasmine's doing it as, like, a callback, as, like, a petty, like, you did this to our shit, and now I'm doing it to yours. Oraya just, like, pounds on the door to her room until a young guard, Killen, opens the door. And he tries to block her, but she's pissed. And then she's like, I'm fucking badass. She's like, I won the Kajari. Like, this guy isn't gonna stop me. And she can tell that he's there, like, he's, like, craving her blood. He's, like, so untrained and young vampire that, like, he can barely be around her. So she uses her Nightfire and grabs him and flings him against the wall, and she takes his sword, and she starts to hear footsteps, and Vincent's voice tells her to kill him because he'll tell everybody that she left. But she just knocks him out and drags him into her room and, like, locks him in there. And then she grabs his cloak and runs. She gets outside pretty easily, but she, like, wishes she had wings because she
could fly. Yes, could fly away.
But she decides that she should go to the stable, and she grabs a horse. And someone tries to stop her, and is like, young man. She just gallops away, which I love. She goes to go through the human district to avoid guards and stuff, but Septimus is just like in her path, and I'm like, he's fucking you over. But he just says that she has a lot to do, but there are barricades ahead, and he's like, you should go that way. And he just says, good luck out there. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, it almost seems like he's trying to help her, but at the same time, he's definitely not trying to help her.
Yeah, there's like something. Obviously, we get what it is, but so Oraya gets to the armory, and she like realizes that Jasmine obviously decided to destroy it, not take it back, because it's too close to the castle anyway. But now there are like, obviously, Jasmine and her men are there fighting, and the Raihn are there fighting too. So like, it's a battle. A Hiyaj vampire man person creature falls off the roof, and they're like still alive, but not gonna be for long. And he like looks up at her and recognizes her, and he tries to say something, and all she can see is VIncent in that moment, because like it was the same when he was dying. And then she hears a familiar shriek and knows it's demons, and her horse bucks, and she like has to throw herself off because the horse starts bolting in the opposite direction. Luckily she's fine, and she still has her sword, and she knows that her people and Jasmine are inside, so she runs into the flames.
Amazing. Okay, so we're in Raihn's point of view now, and the armory is like in chaos because like it exploded and people are fighting. Raihn was like knocked unconscious by the explosion, but obviously he didn't die. But he smelled blood, and there are like Hiyaj and Raihn soldiers fighting everywhere. And like he felt some relief because he thinks that he's not a great king, and he's also not even a great general, but he's a great warrior. So like he was literally just saying, "Oh, I wish I had someone to fight and kill." Now he does. And he says that he's felt the air power, like, in his body since Neculai died, but he's kept it, like, repressed and shoved down, and he refused to, like, acknowledge it or accept it for ages and ages. And he thinks that, like, he loves the power, but he hates how much he loves it. So he goes through the halls, killing demons, and, like, thinking about how the Hiyaj and the Raihn are sort of at a deadlock right now. The Raihn are healthier right now because they're the ones in power, but the Hiyaj are more skilled and have the benefit of surprise. And demons.
Fair. But how do the demons know who to attack?
I don't know. It was not, like, focused on...
It's a non-issue.
It was just
like...
demons!
Yeah.
So, like, he was heading for the back door to close it, like, I guess to, like, stop the flood of Hiyaj from coming in, maybe? I don't know. But found, instead, Oraya fighting a demon. And he could tell by her fighting style that, like, she was off balance because the sword wasn't her... It wasn't her sword, but also, like, wasn't her normal fighting. I think she uses, like, 2 small weapons instead of 1 big one. So it's not her preferred fighting, like, style. But, like, also, he knows her, and he knows how she moves. Because they spent, like, a couple of months together. So he realized that by her being here, she's either trying to escape, or she orchestrated the whole thing. And, like, I would say it's probably more the first than the second. She didn't really orchestrate the whole thing. She told Jasmine that, hey, there's not going to be anyone at the armory tonight.
Yeah.
Pilfer it, take it back, do whatever you need to do. And Jasmine was like, cool, and then just took that information. So, like, I wouldn't say she orchestrated it.
Yeah.
So, she tells him, like, I guess she kills the demon, and then it's like, hey, let me past, and he's like, no. Um, and there's, like, these unspoken words between them. And she asks, like, why he won't just let her go. And he thinks in his head that if he does let her go, he's committing treason against his own people. But also, he can't let her go because he doesn't want them to become true enemies. And he can't kill her, and he isn't done with her yet.
Hey.
So I guess he still wants to try and, like, recruit her to his cause, or, like, get her to forgive him or something.
Yeah.
So he raises his sword to fight her because he wants to see that fight in her again, which is just an eye roll moment. But, like, just as they're about to fight, Jasmine attacks Raihn.
Mm-hmm.
And they really only fight for a second, but then Oraya orders Jasmine to stand down and to get to the others. And, like, I don't like what Raihn does here. So he takes this opportunity to throw his Asteris power at Jasmine and knocks her all the way back against a wall and, like, knocks her out. And, like,
I guess, like, at least he didn't kill her, but still, are we putting the bar on the floor,
like,
still?
Well, that's the thing. Like, Oraya said, like, don't attack him, he's mine, essentially. So Jasmine stops. Mm-hmm. So, like, I just feel like Raihn, like, she stopped. She was no longer a threat to you. Like, just leave her be.
Yeah. But I guess, like, if we go back to what him and Karis were saying earlier, is she who they're trying to kill? Is this treason for him not to actually kill her in this moment, too? Like, there's so much bullshit to all of this. I just don't understand how they're going to figure it out. I'm like, how, like, I thought the whole point was not killing everybody, but now we're just killing everybody. It's not great.
Oraya, so after he knocks Jasmine out, Oraya then attacks him. But he has to rein in his Asteris power really quickly so that he wouldn't accidentally kill Oraya. So he, like, consciously makes the choice to not hurt her. And, like, they fight each other, and then she calls her Nightfire, then he recalls his Asteris again, and they're, like, fighting each other with both of their powers. And he thinks that, like, she is not slowing down or getting weaker. If anything, she's just getting faster and faster and better and more vicious. But, like, they're also not doing any, like, sort of killing blows at each other. Like, they're nicking each other and doing, like, shallow cuts, but, like, not, like, they're not killing each other actively. So they stop and they're at, like, a stalemate, and they accuse each other of holding back. And, like, he gets close and sort of baits her a little bit. And then she holds a dagger to his abdomen. And he just keeps asking, like, are you going to kill me, princess? And he sees in her eyes that she's not going to kill him. And he says that, like, she looks angry and resigned. And, like, he thinks he sees, quote unquote, something else in her expression. And I'm like, love? Is it love you see? What do you see? So he grabs her chin and is actually about to kiss her when, like, blood sprays. And she is shot with an arrow.
Was he about to kiss
I think
her?
so. He, like, tilts her chin upwards towards him. So in my head, that's the first step of, I'm going to kiss you now. So that's how I interpreted it. Maybe other people interpret it different.
I just like, I wasn't reading into it too deeply. I was just getting through it. So fair.
So, like, Raihn sort of, like, grabs her and, like shoves her behind him to protect her, and sees that it was this, like, random bloodborne vampire. And he's like, what are you doing? Angrier than that, though. And the guy's like, I thought Oraya was attacking you.
Well, yeah, and he didn't realize it was her.
Yeah, he just said, I thought, like, that person was
was
attacking you. And, like, she is bleeding quite heavily. And, like, Raihn is berating the soldier. And she sees Jasmine, like, creeping closer. And she sort of, like, waves her off and just tells her, like, through, like, hand gestures and looks, essentially just says, like, to take the high edge and go. Like, now that the bloodborne soldiers are there and starting to fight, the high edge that are left will be decimated. So, like, get out and save their people. And then she she starts to lose consciousness. And I guess the last thing she saw before she went unconscious was Rain's face. And while she was unconscious, she actually didn't dream of Vincent, which is new for her. Mm-hmm. But she did dream of Rain and how he looked when he died and how she felt killing him. So, like, she's just gone through a ton of trauma.
Yes.
She needs therapy.
She really does.
She wakes up in her room in the castle. She's in a ton of pain. And Rain is, like, sitting nearby. And he redresses her wound for her. And she thought of how, like, she had the opportunity to kill him, but she didn't. And, like, she felt like she could have ended everything and avenged her father, but she just couldn't do it. And so she sort of feels bad that she couldn't kill him. So she's still in a ton of pain, and she's got a headache, and Rain just tells her that the arrow was enhanced with blood magic, which is why she's hurting so much. And he also tells her, like, not to worry, they didn't take any high edge alive to torture, but they did clear out a few dozen dead bodies from both sides. No bloodborne, though. Yes.
Interesting.
But they did lose a lot of weaponry from the armory, and it's going to take about a year to get all that, to, like, replenish it, build that back up. Mm-hmm. So, like, she asks why he didn't kill her, but he doesn't know. And we're like, you know.
We know.
you do know. Because, like, but, like, it's more like he doesn't want to admit to himself why. And, like, I'm really frustrated with his conflict. I'm not as mad at her conflict, because, like, they love each other, but, like, her thing is that she doesn't want to love him because he killed her father. I don't understand what his conflict is with loving her. Like, I do, but I don't think it's good enough. Like, he feels like he's betraying his people by loving, like, a high-edge person, but, like, to me, that's not enough.
No, but I guess, like, his conflict here is, like, she set up this attack, and then he is now not actively killing her. He's doing the opposite of killing her, actually. He's helping her out.
Anyway, I just don't understand why he can't admit that he loves her. To himself. I get why he can't tell her right now, because obviously she'd be like, ew.
I feel like he has to know that that's what it is, though. Like, does he not admit it to himself? I don't know. I'm like, obviously, you fucked up everything for her.
Anyway, he just tells her that they need to talk later, rather ominously, and then leaves her to rest. And I'm like, oh my god,
how is she
my anxiety would be through the roof. I would not be able to rest, not for a second.
Right?
Until I learned what we had to talk about. However, he comes back, and she is dressed. So, like, he left her for a few hours, and she was, like, in all this pain, but she's, like, still gonna get dressed.
Wouldn't be me.
And then she's like, where are we going? And he's like, we're going to a meeting with Septimus. So they meet in a small office, and Vale, Septimus, and Carissa is there. Carissa? Anyway.
Don't know. Carissa?
They're all there already. And Septimus pulls out the shards of the communication mirror bowl thing. I don't understand how they got that. Where did they get that from? Her room?
I guess.
Because it was...
Does she not know how to hide anything? Like, this is her room since childhood. Shouldn't she have some hiding spots?
Under the floorboards or something? But
I don't know.
Sure enough, Septimus has it. And he tells her that... He essentially says, like, you know what this is. And he was like, this is something that was made very specifically for King Vincent. And she's like... She just doesn't react. Because, like, Vincent is in her head telling her, like, don't give them anything. Like, don't react to it. Because if you react, then that's giving them, like, ammo. That's giving them information. So she just doesn't react to anything. But, like, she does see the look on Septimus's face and realizes that he's the one who left her door half unlocked. And, like...
He set her up.
And...
She puts it together.
He's the one who went into Vincent's office door and left the mirror out because he wanted to see if she could use it. And, like, she was thinking to herself, she was like, there's no way Vincent would have just left something like this out on the table. So, like, obviously he found it and put it out and, like, set her up so she would go and see it because he wanted to see if she could use it.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was keyed very specifically to Vincent's blood. So, like, they wanted to see if someone with half of Vincent's blood could also use it. And obviously we know that she can. And, like, she sort of, like, refuses to say anything or do anything and sort of, like, insults them a little bit. But, like, Raihn sort of says, like, she's like, why would I help you? And Raihn's like, I mean, you're a traitor, but, like, you are useful. Like, turns out you're going to be useful. And, like, he's posturing and he's sort of putting on an act. But I don't think she sees that in the moment. And, like, I think she's struggling because, like, you were saying that, like, she always knows his true emotions and stuff, and she can read him. But, like, she can, but she also doesn't 100% know what's true. Like, he's saying things right now, like, you're a traitor, but you're useful. And she's like, that's hurtful for her. That hurts her feelings. Hurts her feelings. But, like, she's like, is this how he really feels? Or, like, she can't tell if this is his true intention or not. You know what I mean? Like, if this is what he really thinks of her. So, Septimus, like, continues just talking. And he's giving her information. And he says that most offspring cannot use blooded instruments of their parents. And it's unusual that she can. And very impressive. Which is interesting, because it's like, well, what's special about her then? Why can she? I'm wondering if it's the fact that, like, her other parent is human, so, like, maybe the vampire side of the blood, like, sort of overpowers the human side.
I love spiraling with theories, but I was like, is there something with, like, the descendant of gods? Like, is there something with this, this god blood thing? Like, is there gonna be some connection there with her blood and a god's blood? Or, like, is she, like, a descendant of somebody else on her human side? Like, I don't know. There's so much.
So then Septimus surprises Oraya and asks if she knows the story of Alaris and Nyaxia. And, like, the whole Kajari is about their story. So she sort of looks at him like he's dumb. Like, yeah, of course I do. Like, you bitch. But then he tells her that Alaris is the only major god that has died or been killed. And when powerful beings die, they leave something behind. Like bones, blood, and magic. He then tells the room that he thinks that Alaris's body has been left behind, but that the parts have been scattered across all of Obatreus. Obatreus? I don't know. And they're like, how do you, like, why would you think that? And he says, because I found some of his teeth in the Blood Kingdom. I'm like, you found his teeth in the Blood Kingdom? Like, how do you know they're his teeth?
I know. Okay, teeth. What?
Like, you just happen to find teeth and be like, I wonder who these belong to. It's just odd.
Yeah.
He does say, though, they're like, what are you going to do with the teeth? And he's like, well, I can't really do anything with his teeth. So, like, it makes me even more questionable. Well, then how do you know they're his teeth if they're so unremarkable? Like, if they had, like, a power like, sort of, if they had residual magic in them, I'd be like, yes, okay, you know they're his teeth. But there's nothing he can do with them. They're just fossils. So, I don't really get... Anyway, doesn't really matter, I guess. But he says that, like, the teeth don't really have a lot of use, but they could do a lot if they find his blood. And he thinks that Vincent has some of it tucked away somewhere.
Interesting. And that's when I was like, he put it in Oraya.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, I don't know how, but he either put it in her mother in a, like, City of Bones kind of thing while she was pregnant, or, like, he put it in her after he got her back. I'm like, there's something.
That's a good idea. But, like, Oraya thinks that this is ridiculous. Because they want to use her to find it. And this is what I don't understand. Like, I don't understand how her being able to use Vincent's blooded instruments, because they are related, I don't understand what that has to do with finding god blood.
I think they're assuming that the god blood will be, like, in something that only Vincent could get into with his blood.
Okay.
So she can get into it with her blood. That's my assumption. Like, he has it locked and needs his blood to open it. That's, like... But I don't know... Like, you'd think they would have found it first and then been like, we can't get into this. But they're just making assumptions that he's going to have locked it. Like, what?
But also, they're also trying to be like, well, you know him best. So, like, maybe you can tell us where he might hide it.
Yeah.
And then Septimus tells her that Vincent used to have a penchant for seers. And that's not a Nyaxia gift. So, that mostly it was humans that were seers. And Araya's like, Vincent? No. Like, she didn't believe that Vincent had a thing for seers. But Septimus then tells her that he believes that Vincent has god blood hidden around somewhere. And essentially says, you need to find it for us. And she refuses and says, nope. And Raihn just tells her, like, she doesn't really have a choice because you betrayed me, the king, and orchestrated the attack by the High Edge. But now she's like, oh, this is his mask. So, like, he's pretending right now. And I'm like, how? I'm just, she's all over the place. But, like, he just tells her to think about the offer. She could be dead right now, but she isn't. And she still refuses and tells them that they'll have to kill her and take her blood that way. And Septimus just tells them, let's give her some time to think it over. Like, it doesn't really matter. Let's just give her a couple weeks to, to settle in.
Yeah.
So, later that night, Oraya is asleep in her room, and Raihn visits and tosses her a cloak and tells her to come on. And she's like, no thank you. And he encourages her, and she's like, oh, fine. So they go in through his room and fly out the window with her obviously in his arms. And she's all caught up being close to him. And he just, like, reminds her that she's safe. And I'm like, I'm just annoyed that he has to remind her that she's safe with him. And I'm like, is she though?
Yeah.
So they head to the human district and head into, like, this apartment sort of complex, or, like, you know, one of those old school, like, boarding houses. And they go into a room. And he brought her blades that Vincent had gifted her, the ones that hold poison. He gave them back. Like, Raihn brought them and gave them back to her. But he was like, sorry, there's no poison in them. I couldn't find any. Like, because remember, Vincent said the poison was really hard to get. So, yeah. It's proving true. So she asks, like, where they were and whose rooms they were in. And he was like, they're mine. And he was like, it's somewhere private for me to go where no one knows about it. No one knows about it. No one knows about me. And, like, it's a secure place to go to have conversations that no one's going to overhear. So they start to argue about their, like, respective actions, like her planning the high, sort of giving that information to Jasmine, and him, like, being a dick and taking everything over. But Raihn just sort of, like, chills it down and just gives her Vincent's sword, which is called the Taker of Hearts. And he's like, here, I got this for you. Like, take it. It's yours by right. And apparently there are legends that it's God's blessed and no one can wield it but Vincent. And, like, it hurts anyone else to even pick it up. And she just asks, like, why are you giving me this weapon? And he's like, because she was right that night in Vincent's office, that he has let Septimus manipulate him, and now he's in an alliance that he doesn't want to be in. Which we sort of knew anyway. Like, we knew that to begin with, that he didn't want to be here, but he's sort of trapped.
Yeah.
So he tells her that he wants her help in doing something about it and getting the Bloodborne out of their kingdom. And he says their kingdom. And, yeah.
Of course.
And she sort of realizes that, like, Septimus has manipulated her with the mirror, but, like, he's also manipulated Raihn, because Raihn didn't know anything about the god blood until now. So, like, Septimus has had this whole thing, like, in his back pocket for a while, right? Like, he's always been, like, 2-3 steps ahead of them the whole time. And she also realized that, like, the Hayaj and the Rishon both had losses in that ambush, but the Bloodborne came out unscathed. So,
which we kind of said earlier, too.
And then he tells her that, like, obviously he's been posturing and faking as much as he can, but he still wants out of the deal. So he wants her to help him find the god blood, and then use it against the Bloodborne vampires to sort of get them out. And he says, like, if you do that and you help me, you'll be free to do whatever you want. So he won't hold her to their union, their mirage.
Mirage.
Their mirage of a marriage. So they agree, and he's like, you know, we still have to play those roles that Septimus expects us to play, like me being the brute king and you the wife that hates me. And she's like, that's easy, because I do hate you. However, when she says them, she feels like the words taste rancid in her mouth, because they're true, but they're also untrue. I feel like she wants to hate him, but she doesn't, and that's sort of where her conflict is.
Yeah. It's very, it all comes back to the, like, same relationship as her father, and it just makes me feel bad for her.
Well, they always say that you look for someone, you look for a partner similar to your dad, so...
Gross.
Hey, man, that's what they say.
I know. I just feel bad for her.
So, they agree to be allies, and they shake on it. So, Raihn's point of view, he knows Oraya, like, hates him, and he doesn't blame her, because, again, he killed her dad. But they fly back to the castle, and, like, he misses the closeness of what their relationship used to be. And I'm like, wasn't their relationship just, like...
a necessity?
Yeah, but, like... she didn't trust him until maybe, like, the last month of their relationship, and then they really only had one night where it was physical. So, like, you're lamenting something that, like, as if it was a close relationship when really it was not that, you know what I mean? It wasn't, it was very, very brief.
Yes, I do know what you mean.
So, I sort of don't understand why we're talking about this now, because they shook hands and agreed in his room. And then they fly back. And then she's like, oh, by the way, I'll help you, but you can't lock me up anymore. And he's like, no thanks. Because he's like, he says that, like, he needs to protect Oraya, but also the crown. So, like, maybe she hates him, but he doesn't trust her. He thinks, like, he doesn't trust her walking around the castle.
Yeah.
But, like, he's, like, also thinks that, like, she could be attacked anytime. But he does relent and agree, because she argues that, like, you keep calling me your queen, but who locks up their queen? Like, a queen isn't locked away. And it's like, maybe.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm pretty sure most of them are.
So he does then say, fine, but you have to train again. You have to start training.
Which is like,
yeah,
fun.
And he's like, you're out of shape. And she's like, how rude. But fine. So then she goes to bed, and he tells her that he was being honest when he made her that offer, that there's no one he would rather have ruling the kingdom beside him than her. And, like, she sees the truth of it on his face and just says, like, I know. Sort of like a Han Solo moment.
Yeah.
So she goes to bed. And then Raihn finds that he got, like, a message in his room. And he follows the instructions and goes downstairs to a guest room where he knocks on the door. And someone opens it, and it's Misha!
Yay!
So Misha is Raihn's bestie, who was in the last book, and she's like a bottle of sunshine.
We love her so much.
She was really injured during the Kajari, and Oraya actually orchestrated her removal from the Kajari by letting a weirdo priesty sort of guy to feed on her.
Yeah, like the priest guy. Is he dead?
No, we haven't heard much about him.
No, interesting.
And I don't know what his fate was. I hope.
Yeah, I'm curious now because of remembering he exists.
And he was a creep.
Interesting. So creepy.
So he sort of tells her, like, I didn't want you to come here. I wanted you to, like, stay away and relax. But she just says, fuck you. So, like, he does go in and they catch up and he tells her everything that happened that she's missed since the Kajari. And Misha asks if things are that bad with Oraya. And he's like, yeah, they are. Like,
they're worse than that.
I killed her dad. So Raihn thinks back to how he came to enter the Kajari, and I don't remember if we learned this in the last book.
We did a little bit, but not the exacts, but we did get that, like, Misha is the one that, like, joined first, and then he was like, fuck, I guess I have to. We got that much, but we didn't get, like, as in depth as we do this.
So, like, I guess he thinks back to the memory. He got so comfortable with Misha that he told her who he was, like, that he was the Rishon heir.
Rookie.
Yeah, and she got really angry that he wasn't doing anything about it. That, like, Rishon people were suffering, and he was just, like, sitting back doing nothing. And then she ran away, entered herself in the Kajari, knowing that when he went back and told him that she had entered, he would also enter to protect her.
Yeah, which is, like, I think we talked about this last book, because you're like, but she would still die. Like, if he's gonna win, she would have died. So, like, she literally, that was her plan, to die.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But he's, like, scared that she's here because he wants her to stay safe. But he's happy to see her. He has somebody in his corner now. Yeah. If only Oraya did.
Well, yeah. But it's also, like, it makes you realize that, like, yes, the other people that he has around him, like Carissa and Keturah, are, like, his people from before, but they don't love him. They're not Misha. They're not family.
Anyway, we go to Araya's point of view. So, I guess she woke up and her door wasn't locked. So she, like, just went to go train. And, like, she said that the castle looked really different. And I do think that he's, like, gutting everything and taking everything out of the castle. But, like, she's also realizing that, like, this is the first time she's been allowed to roam freely at night while everybody is up. That, like, Vincent made her stay in her room. He didn't lock the door, but he made her stay in her room. Yeah. So, like, she wasn't a prisoner, but she sort of still was.
Yeah.
And, like, the only reason she knows her way around is because she would sneak out during the day. But, like, she never had permission to wander the castle before.
Yeah.
So Septimus comes upon her and they have this like uncomfortable interaction, and she does well at playing like disgust at Raihn being her husband.
Because it's real.
But then like they sort of move on, and then we skip to her training, and she admits in her head that she's out of shape. And then she realizes it's been a whole month since Vincent died. And like she couldn't believe that a whole month had passed. And she thought about how, like, hard Vincent used to push her in the ring. Like, she said that, like, some days he would make her train so hard that she would be collapsing in her pools of her own vomit by the time they were done.
Which is just wild.
But, like, he said he used to push her because she was a vulnerable human and he wanted to make sure she protected herself. But, like, she was like, but I'm not. I'm half vampire. So, he lied about it. So, like, all that pushing, and he had lied. And then she wondered if he lied about her magic, too. And, like, why he would lie to her in the beginning. Like, I sort of understand keeping it a secret, because, you know, if anybody knew that she was his heir, then she would be, she would be vulnerable. But, like, by keeping her as a quote-unquote pet, I mean, I feel like everyone saw the attachment anyway.
Oh, definitely. I just, like, it's kind of, I think Raihn brought it up last book when she was like, I'm going to attach myself to Vincent and then I'll have his immortality and his power. And he's like, well, what's Vincent getting from it? Like, clearly there's something he's going to get. So, like, I think he was keeping it from her because he wanted part of her power. Like, he wanted her to win the Kajari, attach to him, and then he would get the power. But, like, we don't know that for sure, I guess. Like, obviously there's more nuance to it than just that, but it did feel like that was part of it.
Yeah. So, like, she is fighting a dummy, and she's getting, like, really upset, and, like, you know how when you start to, like, lose control of your emotions and, like, you're taking it out on something else? This is what's happening to her. So she's, like, fighting and, like, beating up this dummy and, like, crying and, like, just having a crisis, essentially. And then Raihn shows up, and it's just like, why? Just leave her alone. Like, I understand, obviously, don't leave her alone all the time, but, like, she's clearly having a moment here. Like,
yeah, she needs this. It's
cathartic. Leave it. Because, like, she's crying, and she obviously doesn't want him to see her crying. But, nope, he doesn't leave her alone. Instead, he offers to spar with her, and she's like, ugh, no. But she ends up saying yes. And then she says that she loves it and hates it with how familiar it is to fight him. And so, like, her night fire sort of explodes around her, I think inadvertently, like, not on purpose. And then he has to block her, obviously, which then she retracts it again. And, like, he asked, like, at the time, he didn't know, but, like, he asks if she did it on purpose, but she stays quiet, so he realizes that it was an accident and it was due to her emotions. And he says that after he got his air mark, everything rearranged inside him, and it felt different. And, like, he reminds her that she's half vampire, and, like, think about what that could mean for you. And she thinks, like, he's right. She doesn't know anything about her lifespan, anything about her magic, anything about her blood. And, like, there's no real way to find out, except to live and find out. So he asks her to, like, take a break and come meet her new bodyguard. And she's like, I don't want to. But then he's like, but look who it is. And turns out it's Misha.
Which I love. Now Misha's in her corner.
So the plan is for Misha to move into a separate room in Araya's suite. So I guess Oraya has, like, another bedroom in her suite of rooms. And she's not gonna, like, hover, but sort of just, like, hang out, go with her on outings and stuff like that. So it's just more like a companion, really.
Yeah.
So, like, she's not originally happy about it, And, like, Misha's like, I won't if you don't want me to. But she's like, no, it's fine. Because she realizes, like, if it isn't Misha, it's going to be another person. So she'd rather it be Misha. So, 2 weeks later, Raihn drags Oraya into his room. I don't know if it's, like, his room in the human district or just his bedroom in the castle. But they want to chat about this place called Lahore.
Sorry. We are children. We're worse than children. Okay.
So it's where Vincent was born and grew up. And Septimus wants them all to go there because he thinks maybe Vincent hid the god blood there. But, like, the place is in ruins, it's at the tip of the kingdom, and surrounded by danger, and, like, nobody goes there, which sort of makes it the perfect hiding place. And there is still a living relative of Vincent, his, like, niece, once or twice removed, Evelina. So she still lives there and, like, cares for the castle, the manor, I don't know, the house. But Oraya's like, she's not going to be happy to see us because you killed Vincent. And I'm married to you. So, but, like, and she's like, are we going to take an army, like, to help us? And Raihn's like, no, we don't have one. And she's like, are you sure it's a good idea for you to leave, like, your castle unprotected? Like, this is his territory now, and he's just gonna leave? But he's like, well, if you go, it's also not smart for me to let you go by yourself and leave you alone. And then he's also like, he's like, I need to get out of here. So that sort of cements the decision, okay, they're gonna go. So that's the next plan of attack. They're gonna go to Lahore to see if the god blood is there somewhere. So then we move into part 3, is it part 3 or part 2?
Must be part 3. I think part 2 was in my part. And I just didn't say it because I was like,
I mean, it's not necessary, but it's called Crescent Moon. And then we have an interlude. So again, the same thing as in the last book. We had these interludes, like these flashbacks. And so this is another one of Raihn's flashbacks. And it says that, like, turning is a fate worse than death. And, like, the man clings to his humanity through every second of it. And it nearly kills him. And it says, like, he spends months in, like, this delirium, dreaming of his home and his family and all the mistakes he's made. And when he comes out of it, there's a king beside him on the bed offering him a goblet of something. And it is blood.
What?
Yes, I know. So, like, he drinks it like he's starving, or, like, drinks it like, oh. And then he tells the king that, sorry, thank you for your hospitality, but I have somewhere to be. Somewhere to go. I gotta get back to my family.
Yeah.
But the man sort of only smiles and says that, like, you don't have a home anymore. You only exist here. And that last bit, like, you only exist here, that's something that stays in Raihn's head for, like, ever and ever. For years. Mm-hmm. And then, like, the king pushes Raihn back on the bed and offers him his wrist. And then he takes it, I guess. Back to the present. So we're in Raihn's point of view. They're leaving the castle. And they're leaving Carissa in charge of the crown affairs. And they're leaving Vale in charge of, like, protecting the castle. So they're not leaving it entirely unprotected. So Keturah is going, as well as Misha and a few other trusted soldiers. Septimus is also coming. So the plan is, so what they do is all of the winged vampires fly. And Raihn carries Oraya. And the bloodborne vampires go on horses.
Do they not have wings because of the curse, or have they never?
No, I don't think they've ever had them, to be honest.
I don't think so either, but I couldn't remember.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So the journey takes 2 weeks. It doesn't really get mentioned.
Yeah.
So, time passes. They show up. And, like, the entire city is completely decimated. It's in ruins. It's disintegrated. It is nothing. And they actually had written Evelina a letter telling her that they were coming, but, like, she didn't write back. And there's, like, no delegation. There's no one really there waiting to accept them. But, like, how would you even... So, like, if you have to send letters, how would you know that, like, you were gonna... We will be there. Like, how did they know they were gonna show up on this day at this time precisely to have someone waiting for them?
I don't know. I guess, like, you just watch. Like, I don't think they said the exact time they were gonna show up. I can't imagine.
No, that's what I mean. So then how would the person know that, okay, we gotta be there waiting? Like, do they just send someone down to the road and be like, stay there all day until someone might show up? Probably.
But you'd think that they'd likely have guards there anyway. Like, this is peoples that are always at war.
That's true. So they, like, are sort of, they walk through, like, the town part. And again, it's all in ruins. But, like, they see the, I don't know what to call it, a castle or what. I feel like it is. I feel like it's a castle.
Castle palace thing.
So the castle does have, like, a gate. And they approach it. And they sort of, it just, like, swings open. And there is one lone boy behind the gate waiting for them to, like, sort of show them. And they say that, like, he looks no more than 16. And he's wearing these, like, tattered clothes that, like, used to be really luxurious. But, like, they're all tattered now and they're hundreds of years out of style.
Yeah. They also, like, they say that his eyes are, like, sharp for a second and then very vacant. And I was like, can she see through their eyes somehow?
I don't know.
Like, it was very much a moment of, like, I was like, the way it's phrased is very odd. So I was like, that's interesting.
I never caught that.
Yeah.
So he does welcome them politely. And they're led through the castle. And, like, they say that, like, compared to the town, it's obviously kept pretty well. Like, it's dusty and in tatters, but, like, it's a standing building.
Mm-hmm.
So they're led to a throne room, and Evelina is there, and she's sitting on her throne. However, it's, like, cracked, and, like, the velvet is rotting, and, like, but she's really trying to, like, appear as this regal sort of ruler, I'll say. So she approaches Oraya and, like, hugs her, and, like, puts her hands on her shoulders and, like, hugs her, and Oraya, like, stiffens. And Raihn starts to, like, make those pleasantries, like, thank you for welcoming us and blah, blah, blah. But then he smells, like, the faint whiff of blood and sees that Evelina used her claws to dig into Oraya's shoulder. And, like, there's blood on her hands now. And, like, she's wearing this, like, beautiful white dress and, like, lets her hands rest in her lap and gets, like, blood on her white dress. And, like, Raihn is furious.
Yeah. Don't touch his woman and hurt her.
But, like, she's wearing...
Touch her and die.
Touch her and die, yeah.
That's the words.
So, like, she's wearing this, like, dreamy expression, and they say that her voice is, like, reminiscent of a 14-year-old's. So, like, she is not quite right.
Yeah.
It is all very creepy. So, like, then she tells them she's prepared a ball and a feast for them. So they head into the ballroom, and all of the guests are children. And they said most of them are between, like, 10 and 15. They're all wearing ill-fitting clothing, like, usually stuff that's, like, way too big for them. And she tells everyone to sit. And the children all obey immediately. So they're like, why are the children behaving so well? Like, what's the punishment if they don't?
Well, yeah, that's what kind of made me be like, there's something going on with these kids other than just obeying for obeying's sake. But... I don't know. Yeah.
So they all sit, and she calls out the food. And then children's servants come out and put a naked woman on the table. And, like, the woman is still alive, but, like, her throat has been cut, so she's struggling, but not... She's just bleeding out.
Yeah, she's choking on it in her throat. A la Arabin.
So she's glancing around at everyone wildly. Like, oh my god, what's happening to me? And it sort of reminds Oraya of her fight with Vincent when he showed her, like, the truth of his court. She got mad at him during the Kajari one day, and, like, he showed her that, like, his court is brutal and, you know, they do attack and kill women, or kill humans.
Yeah.
And then she looks over at Raihn, and he looks, like, horrified for a split second, but he covers it up well. And then other humans are placed on the table for everyone else. So I guess this woman is for them, and, like, Evelina and some of the dignitaries. But then there are other people placed on the table a bit further down for the children. It's like a adult and kiddie table.
Yeah.
So, like, Oraya decides she needs a drink to, like, calm her nerves. So she picks up her goblet and takes a sip of her wine. Only it isn't wine, it's more blood.
Which, like, you probably could have expected.
But, like, at the same time, like, she thinks to herself, like, she doesn't hate the taste. So I think we're starting to, like, her half-vampire side, like, obviously she's never felt the need to drink blood before, but sort of learning that maybe she could.
Yeah.
So, like, everyone else isn't as uncomfortable as her and Raihn are, but, like, it's still really awkward. Mm-hmm. And Raihn sort of goes to, like, bite the woman and, like, goes to, like, I guess eat.
Yeah.
And Oraya sees, like, a look that passes between them and, like, knows that, like, Raihn is about to show her compassion. Because she knows that, like, there's nothing she can do. This woman is already dead.
Yeah. You can't repair a slit throat very easily when you're not a doctor.
And, like, there's just nothing to be done to save her. They're literally in the middle of nowhere. There's no one else around. So, like, what are they going to do?
Yeah.
She's dead. So Raihn bites her in the jugular and kills her. And takes really only 3 or 4 gulps. And Evelina's, like, a little unhappy that he killed her. And he sort of, like, covers it up by being like, sorry, I got overzealous. Like, I got so excited. But, like, she'll stay warm for a few hours. She's still good. Like, eat. And she's like, okay, you're right. But, like, don't worry. There's plenty more where that came from. And I'm like, where are they getting these people?
I don't understand this place. And I think that's kind of the point.
Okay. But then she also, like, offers Oraya a cheers. And, like, hours later, Oraya and Raihn are talking. And, like, apparently she's been Oraya says, like, she's been working really hard to get Evelina drunk. And I'm like, are you getting drunk on blood?
I think she says a mixture of blood and wine.
Okay. Well, like, now she's out dancing by herself with one of the children. They're just dancing on the dance floor, just the 2 of them. And, like, Araya's idea is that if she's drunk, she'll spill her secrets so that she can ask about maybe a potential hiding spot. And they sort of look at all the children, and they all look similar with the same eyes and golden hair. And that's what I don't understand. I don't understand why do all the children look the same?
Oh, because that's what she wants.
What do you mean that's what she wants? She, like, dyeing... How is she dyeing their hair? Like, and making them wear contacts? Like...
No, she just picked them.
Oh, you're so smart.
A la Hitler.
God.
Blonde hair, blue eyes.
That's pretty bad of me. So, Raihn then realizes that all of these children are turned. So, like, we learn sort of in the interlude how painful turning is and how, like, you feel like you're dying. So, like, Evelina presumably it's Evelina has turned all of these children and forced that amount of pain on them. And
not great.
Ooh. And they're, like, lapping at the pools of blood like cats. And they have these, like, vacant expressions. And they said that, like, born vampires will age, you know, until they reach, like, the age of majority, and then they'll sort of stop and live for a really, really long time. But turned children are stuck in that, at that age forever, for eternity.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, Raihn, they sort of assume that she's probably getting the children from the human lands, from traffickers, or, like, picking them up from shipwrecks, or, like, even going and getting them from human districts. And that's how they realize that, like, Evelina is straight up batshit crazy.
Yep.
And so they're like, we need to get this done and get out of here ASAP, because this shit is wild.
Yeah. I'm like, they have to kill her, right? Like, they can't let her keep doing this.
That's not in their immediate plans.
I know they haven't said it, but I'm like, that has to be the plan.
You should. So Oraya is like, okay, I got this. And Raihn is like, ooh, I don't think I want you to go. And she's like, well, she ain't gonna talk to you, so it has to be me.
Well, yeah.
So Oraya approaches her, and she's gonna, like, get info from her. And, like, her cousin is, obviously, Evelina is drunk. And, like, I say she's, like, loving on her, but not in, like, and, like, being like, I'm so glad you're here, it's so lonely here. And, like, I don't mean she's loving on her in a sexy way, but in a, like, drunk way. You know how, like, when you're drunk girls, like, immediate best friends, that sort of thing. Like, I'm so glad you're here. Oh my god, I love you so much. Like, that sort of a thing.
Yeah.
And Araya's like, oh my god, can you show me my dad's old room and, like, some of his stuff? And Evelina's like, oh my god, okay. So they start walking down. Of course.
What a cliffhanger we're leaving her on, because I haven't read any further than this.
So, yeah, we're gonna catch up with Oraya and Evelina next week and see what's in her dad's room.
Yeah, what did he leave there? And is it the blood of a god? Like, I highly doubt it. We're not going to find it in the first place we look, because that's not how books work. But it could be fun. And hopefully they kill her. I hope
she is.
But we'll see.
Straight
that
up cooking.
Shit. Yes. So yeah, I guess that is it for this week. If you want to get in touch with us and share your thoughts on anything you heard in our episodes, or if you have any book suggestions, please reach out to us by email at coffeeandcoread@gmail.com. or on Instagram or Facebook at Coffee and Co-Read and coffee.coread on TikTok.
So next week, we will be reading chapters 21 to 37 of Ashes in the Star-Cursed King. So make sure to follow along, and if you're enjoying our chats, don't forget to follow, rate, and review wherever you get our content. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you on the next page.